been doing this now for a while. Have you seen an increase in understanding? Have you seen that things have changed since you started doing your presentations?
You know, I think what I've seen the difference is that we're starting to get people to talk about it. Where before in the beginning, everybody was very scared because anytime you talk about a child hurting themselves or bullying and cyberbullying, anything, we kind of stood back a little bit. Now we're seeing schools open up and talk about this topic. We're seeing parents say, okay, listen, I don't have that ability to say, you know what, kids know more than I know about technology. They're saying we do need to understand it. And so that's the positives. The other positive I see is within students. Once students are empowered and understand that the things that they do say, the things that they text and upload, that those truly can be detrimental to another person, you do start seeing that side of them changing a little bit, thinking about what they're saying, thinking about how they're interacting with others. And so that's the positives that we are really seeing.
And you talked about bullying, but for so long in the 70s, 80s, take my lunch money, go
Right.
and get out. Now with technology, internet, of course, you know, there's a lot more that goes beyond the scenes that maybe teachers aren't able to find. Can you go ahead and explain a little bit more on how much easier it is for kids to bully other kids now?
Right. You know, there was that day of where bullying, I truly believe bullying has not changed over the years. We all say mean things. We're all a little bit negative at times. We have good days, bad days. It's now the ability to be able to do it 24 hours a day. When that child would maybe go home and be a little bit more of where they kind of stood away, they didn't want to go outside and play, you could kind of tell. Now you can't tell. What happens is they go into their room, they've got the cell phone that has everything on there. They start isolating themselves. We don't know as parents many times what is exactly being said back and forth because kids quickly delete these things when they're hurtful or mean things that are being said. So if you go to try to look at their phone later, you might not know what's going on. The same thing within schools is teachers can be there in most places, but they can't be there 24 hours a day. And so the problem is it maybe words or things are being said physically or verbally that goes then to any type of internet or electronics. That electronics follows them now 24 hours a day, and it spreads so quickly that many times children feel, everybody feels that way. Everybody's after or against them, and so it can truly be suffocating for them, and they start to isolate. And so those are things that we talk about to really start to look and watch for.
One of the things that really touched me about your story and frustrated me as well was that it was adults who were involved in what happened
Right.
to your daughter. Do you think that through your seminars that adults are beginning to understand the power of this medium and what it can do to the lives of children?
You know, I think that we have a mixture. We still are going to have in presentations some parents who say, come on, I went through this stuff, big deal, close the computer down, shut off the phone, don't worry about it. We do have other parents that are starting to realize, because I am pretty blunt with them, saying, we can't say that anymore. It's not something, if you're going to do that, you're sticking your head in the sand. We do have other parents that are saying, listen, I need to be proactive. If I teach my children how to ride a bike, I teach my children about stranger danger, I teach them about these things. This is the same thing. And so we do have parents who are younger ages with younger children that are being much more proactive. It's really trying to get the rest, really in my age group, you know, in the 40s, in the 50s, and trying to get them to understand that, you know, we do have to take a step up. And I think the hardest thing is for parents with children, especially in high school, is this technology has advanced so quickly that as parents, we have really lost track of it. I mean, we're far behind. So trying now to go in and say, hey, listen, I want the passwords. I want to know what you're doing. Who are you talking to? It's almost this thing of where the kids, it is their birthright. They don't feel it's a privilege. And so what tends to happen is this huge tension can be between the parents and kids. And parents sometimes feel at a loss, like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I can't take it out of their pocket every 5 minutes. So it can be a struggle, but that's why we try to kind of decrease a little bit of that tension, talk about what parents can do, talk about what educators can do so that we all understand we can't keep our kids in a bubble, but we can do things to try to watch and protect them.
And bullying happens everywhere, but are you seeing, you know, through what you've seen, that bigger schools have more bullies, or is it the rural schools who are have more bullies, or is it just really doesn't really matter where, they're everywhere?
You know, I think bullying exists on all fronts. No matter what part of the country I've been in, no matter large, small, inner city, rural, suburban. The big difference is that I do see in rural schools, because many times it is families have been born in this, you know, this county, And so if you're here, that you belong. If you come in from outside, you really aren't a native of that area. There can be less resources in very rural areas. So when we're talking about psychologists or counseling or outsourcing, those can be less than what they would be in a city that's suburban or more inner city. Again, funding, dependent on that funding, if they have the funding for schools with counseling and different resources. So those are the hardest things that I have found, that kids many times will come and say to me, you know, listen, there's nothing, no one to talk to. We can't go anywhere. My parents can't afford to take me into the city to go to the doctors or to do this. And so that's where we really do see the struggles for rural.
One of the things also in your story that really touched me was the fact that you were very proactive in monitoring your daughter.
Right.
How important is it for parents to be involved? You kind of touched on this, but be involved in actually watching what their children are doing on the computer and on phones.
I think it's extremely important to monitor your children, especially at early ages. If you are going to have a child who is playing an iPhone with the iPhone apps, or they have, you know, the iTouch, whatever it may be, I don't care what age, if they are 2, 3, 4 years old, you start making rules of the computers stay in the living room. These do not go in your bedroom. I mean, basic things that you want to start working with them. When they get older, it's starting to make up rules of, I will have passwords. We talk about the accounts we're going to open. We talk about cell phone usage and what applications you can have and what you can't. And so parents can start very early with monitoring different things. There's so many things that can be done, but if we start it early, it's going to be much easier than to right now go into a 14-year-old's bedroom and say, computer's out of here, give me your cell phone, I'm putting apps, I'm doing all of these things to monitor you. They literally will think their life's over. And so we really talk about that very early stages of taking the steps and monitoring, so that when the children get into their teenage years, you've done all of those things, and at that point in time, you still help and monitor, but you kind of alleviate that major pressure.
This will be my final question
Okay.
for you. In your situation, of course, it went to the absolute extreme.
Right.
Can you go ahead and tell me, for those, it doesn't go to the extreme as often, but the emotional toll that people have just bullying once or even twice, or maybe through all their whole high school years?
Right. You know, I think bullying, cyberbullying, any forms of the aggression or harassment against another person, it truly leaves emotional damage. We don't see, when we physically get hit, we can see blood, we can see bruises, we can see that physical part. But when somebody is being bullied relentlessly or being cyberbullied, we don't see the internal emotional scars. That brain scans of soldiers who have been in combat, who have post-traumatic stress syndrome, show same similarities in brain scans of children who have been repeatedly bullied over a period of time. And so what we're seeing is that these are emotional and internal scars, and it not only affects that child, but the whole entire family dynamic, because that child comes home, that family is trying to figure out what to do, they try to go to the school, and it really can be a hard time. And so what we want kids and parents to know is that through talking, through counseling, through investigating and finding out what's going on, things can get better in time. And not every single child attempts to hurt themselves or goes through severe cases, but we want to make sure that they're there, they understand it, and we can get them the help and the resources they need.